Okay, that's how it is. Peace on earth. How's it going? I got a little green tea here. And I recently gave a little talk about the metaphysics of monotheism that I'd like to put out there on YouTube. How's my hair? All right. So my first book is The Complete Patriot's Guide, and this helped me decipher a lot of systems of the status quo, a lot of politics, and it's got some substance to it. A little bit smaller of an idea here about monotheism. Oh, hi there. The metaphysics of monotheism. So, to begin with, a fault of monotheism that is clear is the insistence that there's only one way to interpret theological biblical text, spiritual ideas, right? So monotheism is actually not necessarily the belief in one God. It is specifically the belief in one way to perceive God. And the more strict monotheists propose that each story has only one interpretation, right? Each biblical story or each teaching within their book has only one interpretation. The again, more harsh the monotheist, the more rigidly they stick to literal interpretations, right? So what is called the four pards, PRDS. This is a system from Hebrew teachings, from the book of the Zohar, I believe. I'm not getting mixed up. But the four pards are, and they're known as the four paths to paradise, because of how they free the mind, right? And so this paradise PRDS relationship is because of how freeing the four pards idea can be. So again, most monotheists will present one interpretation, and most all monotheists' interpretations are going to be literal. The literal interpretation is one format. Sometimes some teachings are presented as allegorical, right? So literal and allegorical are the first two modes of the four parts. And I look at the four parts as a duality of polarity, right? And that is the first duality, first polarity. The second aspect, or the second two pairs of the four parts, are comparative and secretive, right? So the four parts, the four modes to paradise, are interpreting spiritual and theological teachings with the understandings that they can be literal, allegorical, comparative, and secretive. Again, most teachings in monotheism are going to be rigidly literal. And in fact, you know, some monotheists will get severe punishment for even suggesting that there is another way to interpret spiritual theological teachings. Well, I must be a great sinner, because there are other ways to interpret theological teachings. And the four parts are freeing. of what I call consciousness control constructs, right? So if you say that there's one way to do a thing, that is a consciousness control system, right? So the four parts really, and the monotheist presentation of there only being one interpretation, reveal monotheism to be faulty at best. I begin the Metaphysics of Monotheism, which is right now a free ebook on that big website where the back alley of publishing takes place, because all the idea mongers have hoarded the money-making fiction into the consciousness, and that's all people think there is. Well, my book is nonfiction, and it's free right now, the ebook on Amazon. But it'll only be free a couple days. But the Metaphysics of Monotheism, my book, begins with the spiritual golden rule. The golden rule, of course, most people are familiar with, is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or a better way to look at it too is do not do unto others as you would not have them do to you, right? But the spiritual golden rule, I call it, is you cannot interfere with someone's spiritual pursuits / interpretation, right? So everyone has the right to go through the different levels of interpretation, and maybe even other levels that their contemporaries have not gone to before. That's why you don't restrict teachings to one format, one interpretation, right? Anything that says there's one way to do a thing is going to eventually be faulty. The best way to move a refrigerator, it might be, right? If you move refrigerators for a living, but eventually you're going to find a time and place where that doesn't work, where you're going to need a different format, right? And so different times and minds require different teachings. And so to put forth spirituality into any monotheist dogma goes against the spiritual golden rule, which is allow everyone to interpret spiritual, religious teachings, lessons as they see fit. Let's see. Some notes here. The word monotheism really exposes and reveals itself. Personally, you can look at it like this. I do. That religion is watered down spirituality, right? It's not the other way around because of the spiritual golden rule. Rigidity is not known for its capacity expanding properties. It's constricting. And monotheism is a constriction. It's a consciousness confinement construct, a con, right? And the word monotheism means one-wayism. Like, I mean, in the rest of the world, everyone is against monopolization, except people allow the monopolization of religion, which is really the corruption of spirituality, well, this is accepted. Because again, it's not the worship of one God. It's the demand of one way to perceive God. All three big monotheist formats I propose began on a misconception. And we've been living this misconception for a couple thousand years. It's monotheism in its spiritual sense is not the demand that there's one way to perceive God. The I am presence is not correctly put forth as I am the one. This is religious institutionalization. And this is the greatest confusion of which all monotheism is based on. As I break down in my book, The Metaphysics of Monotheism. The I am presence is more correctly communicated as I am the oneness. There's no the one in the oneness. It's all oneness. So as soon as you say, I am the one, you've separated yourself from the oneness, henceforth causing division. So the confusion that monotheism is based on is this. It's not the one, it's the oneness. All things together in the oneness. Not he's the one. That's not how it works. And definitely, that's not, as the Gnostics put forth, that's not what Christ is about. It's about you becoming Christ consciousness. You being the oneness, right? Not being separated with some monotheistic dogma, some ritualistic institutionalization paying homage to some oligarch who doesn't want you to eat pigs because of his desert water supply. Although I wouldn't mess with the pork. It's not the itis. So the metaphysics of monotheism begins with the spiritual golden rule, which is allowing everyone to perceive God as they find suitable at that certain time and place, and then they have the ability to move on. So that's about one more thing about the etymology of monotheism, right? And how people accept that. People accept monotheism as being the most evolved form of religion. That's what I was taught in school, that humankind went from paganism to, some other format with many gods and this and that, and then on and on, and now we one God. It's the one God. It's all the same one God. Well, that's actually not the case, and monopolization is a sense of that, right? Because monotheism is the monopolization of mind, and money is related to monotheism etymologically and energetically, right? Because bottom line, me, right? What's the bottom line? It's all about the money. Well, it's all about the money unless it's all about the consciousness confinement construct that they're under, right? So money means one eye, right? That's why you see on the dollar bill one eye, the one eye at the top of the pyramid. And it's said, I never was able to find the source of this quote. So if there's anyone out in the web there that happens to listen to this, I haven't been able to find the source, but I've heard multiple people reference it. Culture runs downstream of government. Government runs downstream of religion. So we can see this taking place in all different cultures and societies, right? So everyone is really monotheistic in their approach to things, and money energetically represents where they can put forth that monotheistic operative mindset, right? And whenever you hear someone saying there's nothing off the table, that's a monotheistic or monopolistic or monothematic approach to doing a thing, where they're so insistent on a certain format towards a certain result that they'll express that using weapons of mass destruction is not off the table. So monotheism actually is the biggest consciousness confinement construct there is. Religion is a problem, probably. Monotheism is certainly a problem. Absolutely. There's no argument. There's no legitimate basis for anyone to represent monotheism as being anything but a consciousness confinement construct. Certain religions are okay. A lot of spirituality is double plus good, right? This is a way to really free our minds, beginning with perhaps considering the four parts, the literal, allegorical, comparative, and secretive interpretations of spiritual lessons. And I love that word lesson, because what I'm trying to drop today is a little lesson about monotheism. And I hope it makes you feel like there's less on. I hope it just peels off some layers of the consciousness confinement construct that is monotheism and monothematic approaches. So, peace on earth. Ethan Indigo Smith here. I just wanted to drop some science, and hopefully if you feel like reaching out or grabbing my book, that'd be immensely supportive. But I appreciate any communication and feedback. So, peace.